Well, thank you for that introduction, and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to have a bit of a chat with Bob about Hillgrove Resources and where we're going to. This session's about critical minerals and the transition, and copper plays a big role in that. Bob, just want to perhaps set the scene a little bit and provide a little bit of background about where Hillgrove is at. How did you get there, and just tell us a little bit about the evolution of your Kanmantoo mine.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for having us here today, and thanks to IMARC. It's great to be here. It's even better to be here at lunchtime, I think, so there's a big audience. Kanmantoo in Hillgrove. We're actually a copper producer in South Australia. We started producing around about 9 months ago. We've produced around about 12,000 average tonnes of copper a year so far, and we're aiming to push that up. A little bit of history about Kanmantoo. The Adelaide Hills were being mined in copper back in the 1860s, and in the 1960s, Broken Hill South started exploring around Kanmantoo, and they actually pegged the initial ground, and in 1970, an open pit started between 1970 and 1976. We're a reincarnation of that. In the 2000s, exploration started again with the growth of copper and the copper price, and the next pit started in 2010, and it actually went from 2010 to 2020. They produced around about 137,000 tonnes of copper and about 55,000 ounces of gold during that period of time. In 2020, we went into a hiatus, a care and maintenance period. We drilled the underground, and the plan was to actually drill for an underground operation and to start producing from the underground as soon as possible. We actually had a few issues with the open pit. One of those issues was grade and reconciliation. That was fixed through those periods of time of drilling, and the reconciliation's working really well now. And the other issue was just around the restarting of the operation, and that's done now. So Kanmantoo's up and running. We're producing proudly South Australian, and proudly producing copper for the world.
Thanks, Bob. Just talk about capital now. Just all new projects require capital to get off the ground, whether that's from internal resources, external debt or equity. Can you tell us a little bit about the landscape for accessing capital for an emerging producer such as Hillgrove? You know, was it a challenging environment for you?
I'm going to speak with hindsight because I wasn't actually there for most of it. To put it in context, I've been at Hillgrove for 3 months now. I started on the 1st of July. So I'm riding on the back of a lot of work of other people. To put it simply, it's actually difficult to get access to a lot of capital. We need to make sure that we have the appropriate capital for the right time, and then we need to make sure that it's positioned right from the amount we take in, whether we take equity or debt. I'll give you an example. Just recently we took debt, and it was only a $10 million debt facility, and it was an insurance policy, so we didn't want to go out and get capital through the equity markets at this stage, because we've just been and come through the capital expense program, and we're starting to build our cash and we're starting to build our stability. So really it depends where you are in the cycle to how difficult it is. It also depends at what end of the market you're playing. Our size is definitely not two gold miners, Northern Star and Evolution, and they're not a BHP or a Rio or a Newmont. And it depends where you are and what you need it for. So it's challenging, but that's the excitement of doing what we do.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. So was there any particular, apart from, you know, obviously looking at different stages of the project and what your needs were, debt versus equity, it's really just what's appropriate at the time?
I think that you need to consider where you are in the cycle of investment. You need to consider what's in the best interest of the shareholders. And sometimes there's competing interests from the shareholders. especially if you have a couple of large majority holders, and you need to weigh up all those when you go forward with seeking the right and appropriate method of capital raising.
Thanks, Bob. Just wanted to talk now about project developments in a little bit more detail. As we know, in a rising market, rising prices, it's about speed to market. You've been involved in a number of new projects over the years from your time with Minerals and Evolution and now Hillgrove. Any comments or thoughts about what can be done to speed up the project life cycle?
It's an interesting topic. To make quick decisions, sometimes you need to make decisions with limited knowledge or not all the information you'd like. I'm speaking from an engineer's perspective now. That's sometimes difficult to do. It's sometimes difficult not to have all the answers before you make a recommendation. It's also about ensuring that when you do make those recommendations, it's appropriately risked. So the threat or the opportunity is appropriate for the decision that you're making to move a project forward. The only way that we're going to get the copper projects in the world up and running with the speed that we need is for people to take a leap of, it's not faith, but a leap of decision that, you know what, we have enough data now to go forward with. We have enough information now to actually make that next stage, and then speak with your board or your investment community about why that decision's the right one for us. But it's also about the regulatory environment you're in, and to ensure that you're speaking with the departments or the people that actually have to approve things. If we can't get the approvals with speed, it's no point having the best project in the world. You're not going to get it there quick enough. If you look at where we're at with the current systems, there are some regulatory systems which actually help the process, and there are some which don't necessarily help and are not necessarily there to speed the process up. I'm not talking about speeding it up to make poor decisions from an environmental or a social perspective. I'm talking about we have enough data to make an appropriate decision to move forward. So there's some of the things that we struggle with. I believe, and there's been a couple of times in my history where we've made decisions to move things fairly quickly, but they're all articulated with a risk perspective. And there's sometimes the threat is too great and you don't move it forward. And there's other times when the opportunity is such that you do move forward with speed. And that's how you bring things to the market quicker.
So are you saying there's perhaps a bit of a culture of, you know, death by analysis in some situations where people analyse projects to death before actually proceeding with development and end up with inertia?
I was actually told I'm not allowed to say this. Yes. As technical people, what we do is we try to analyse a topic to the nth degree because we want to find the right solution. Sometimes that right solution is actually there in front of us before we have all the data, but it's hard to move past that. But it's then the ability to how we actually articulate that risk is what we need to understand. And that's how we need to get that project moving forward. It's very easy to not make a decision. It takes courage to actually make a decision which is the right decision for the future.
Thanks. And the regulatory environment, your sense is whether the balance is good, bad or indifferent at the moment? A miner always want it to be better. I can understand that.
Different states are different. Then we've got the federal over the top. Sometimes they actually are in competition with one another. I'll put a plug in for South Australia. It's very easy to talk and to work with the South Australian departments, and they're very friendly when you try to get things moving quicker. When you look around Australia and you see issues occurring which put in question the validity of some decisions, that puts the wind up the investment community as well. And that's just something we need to deal with. We like stability. We like to know that things are going to be the same today and tomorrow, because then we can make good decisions.
Thanks, Will. So, what you see is copper's future. Your board must have thought it was promising, seeing as they relatively recently gave approval to proceed with the underground development at Kanman 2. But where do you see copper going? Heard lots of studies and reports about the need for copper. But can you provide any insights?
Just to be blunt here, I'm a copper bull, so I like copper. I believe that copper has a place in the world. We have a macroeconomic situation at the moment where the average grade that we're mining has gone down by 40% since the mid-90s, but our desire to use copper is growing. We've got a growing population, we've got a growing urbanisation of third world and people that want to get into that better living environment. We've got a growing electrification network which requires copper to get it forward. And then we've got the renewables. All that's on the demand side. On the supply side, as I said, we've got a reduction of 40% in the copper grade. We have a situation whereby it takes longer and longer to get projects up and running. If you look at these graphs around of the amount of discoveries today as opposed to the amount of money we're spending, that's gone down significantly in the last 20 years. So the supply side of copper is going to be the driver of the two. The demand is there, we have the demand, and the closer we get to the point of the decision, the supply and the demand will match, so the price has to go up. Copper at $4, $4.30 a pound US is not bad, it's pretty good. Anyone with any age on them will remember a lot worse commodity prices. We should be able to mine at these prices, but I also believe that it's going to go up from here too. It's gone up for the last 20 years.
Thanks. And copper in the context of how does it fit in with the other critical minerals? Are there different market dynamics at play compared to lithium, nickel, and other critical minerals?
Yes. So if you look at the longer term graphs of the copper supply demand, it's usually in deficit, whereas nickel and lithium go through this cyclical nature, which is also why you get big booms and busts. Copper will go up and down in the short term, and you do see fluctuations in the 6 months and the 12 months time cycle. But generally speaking, over the 2 to 3 years, it's still going up. Where does it fit into critical minerals? Without copper, you can't do the rest. Without copper, we cannot get the electricity around the globe. Without copper, we can't build the houses and the requirements for the population and the urbanisation of the population. So from my perspective, copper is that underpinning commodity that is required to actually get to where we need to get to.
Thanks. Look, just got a couple of minutes left. Just wanted to touch upon briefly cost and supply chain issues. We've heard in recent past, supply chain issues have been a major source of delay in getting new projects off the ground. What's been your more recent experience about supply chain delays and so on?
Recent as in Kanman 2 and Hillgrove. Yeah. Where we're located, it's really nice from a access to different types of resources. Our people come from the Adelaide Hills. Our resources come from the Murray or the interconnector between Melbourne and Adelaide from a power source. And our consumables come from the eastern states or Adelaide. We're only 55 kilometres from the centre of Adelaide. So it's a nice place to be in from that side of the equation. Saying that, we're still feeling the increase in price and the commodity increases. But generally speaking, from Kanman 2, we're not seeing what a lot of the other commodities are seeing, which is also why we can actually make money at the lower grades that we're mining. It's also why we can actually mine underground and make good money as well. So all those things come together to really put us in stead for a good future.
And I guess you had the benefit of there being already an established mill there at Kanmantoo to recommence mining, so perhaps didn't have some of those really big capital purchases to have to deal with in recent times.
Correct. So we have a 3.6 million tonne mill. We're only planning to put 1.4 to 1.8 million tonnes through it, but we didn't have to capitalise that. So our capitalisation didn't need that $400 million to be covered. Our capitalisation only needed the underground development, the restart, the recommissioning, etc., which makes for nice economics.
Thanks, Bob. I think that's about all we've got time for, so thanks very much for agreeing to speak with us today.
Thank you, and hope you enjoy IMARC.